So, Amy, the Worth Savoring cookbook that the museum put out, it's been 25 years now. That was 1997. And you have recently come across a copy of the cookbook. So, tell me about that.
Yeah, so Mama died, in March, so it's been like 7 months or something. And I was cleaning out, and it's really, and I know everybody probably, this happens when you're cleaning out family stuff, but I almost threw that cookbook away. It was in the carport, and one day I just kept going, I have too many cookbooks. I would just throw it, and for some reason it kept reappearing. And so then finally I'm like, fine, I'll take it inside. I sat down on my couch, I opened it up, it was like Mother telling me a story. And on not every page, but on several pages, she had written notes, I'm assuming to us, but who else, but it was, and in her handwriting before she ever had a stroke, and her words, her humor. I mean, some of it, I kind of want to read it for you, but some of it, I've heard people get mad. Some of it's like, well, he's an idiot or something. It's just solely Patsy, So it is precious. So I've let Price read some of it, but Hayes hadn't seen it yet, but it's like a treasure. It's like unbelievable. Her handwriting, but also I learned things about Mama and this town that I did not know. And when you started talking to me about the museum, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's crazy how food and kitchens and recipes bring families together. Because even in Mom's death, it's bringing us together. It's really cool.
Do you remember her using that cookbook?
Oh yeah, for sure. But Mama, I don't know, Mama had most recipes in her head. She didn't really follow recipes anymore. And I don't really follow them well. We're a creative cooking family. And so when we're cooking, what I'll do, there are some things that Mama and Daddy made. Daddy was a great cook too. And there were some great things that they would cook all the time. And you just didn't really have a recipe. But then there were other things, like one of the recipes that Glenda and Mama, or I know Mama put it in there, was Laura's rolls. And we have to follow directions on Laura's rolls because Laura was Price and Hayes' babysitter when Hayes was born, and she was the best cook. And Mother writes about that in there. And it's just little, it's not, and there were some other things, it's historical for us, but it's historical for the town too. She wrote little things like, Kathy Carter makes the best of this, or this is so-and-so's grandmother, or whatever, But then it's really neat, but she didn't. I think she, if she needed to know, let's say she's making hot chocolate or something, and she would know in her head what it was, and she'd go, oh, let me check, and then she'd go back and check it. But it was she wasn't a recipe, and Mama was a really good cook, and Daddy was too, but they were very different cooks. I think that recipe was important. That recipe book was important to Mom, because she and her whole family, Aunt Glenda, all of them, are such civil servants. They just wanted to help New Albany all the time. And so when the museum came about, I think I was trying to look at what year did you say?
97 was the copyright.
So I was in grad school. I wasn't living here then. I'm in and out of New Albany my whole life. But I think I remember that being a really big deal because I had to come home for the sesquicentennial to write some note for the time capsule. Everything, Mama was very involved in all that kind of stuff. So this was a very big deal. But a lot of these recipes, I think, she either knew them or she was probably part of the committee or something that had to ask people for them or something, because there's a lot of her people in there, I've noticed. But there's probably maybe they're everybody's people, I don't know. There's a few that sometimes I just I do this now. I'll just flip it open and see what she says. So this says, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is talking about the dining room of the Rainey Hotel. And then you look down here and Mama writes, and I might get teary because it's so sweet because it's her handwriting. It's Steve's band practice place, lost instruments to fire. So the reason they're even named the Paul Rainey Band, and I had to tell Price and Hayes this the other day. I was like, I thought y'all knew everything about Mom and Daddy, so I don't feel like I'm a historian. But I said, Daddy's band is named Paul Rainey Band because they practiced in the Paul Rainey Hotel. Did you know this? Price didn't even know this. He's like, I just thought they were Paul Rainey Band because he was from New Albany. I'm like, what? You have missed out on some family history. Anyway, so this little thing talks about that they made this grilled asparagus or whatever it is here at the Pomeranian Hotel. And then Mama writes about the fire. So it's like little history things like that. So the fire did burn all the instruments and then they had to start over. So that was kind of cool. So like here's one. Julia's all brand rolls. Leroy Macmillan, Roger Macmillan's mom. And then Miss Julia always lived across the street from us when we were growing up. So it was like right over there. So she's kind of doing that. Then she's got Grace Province underlined right here because Grace is related to them. So it's almost like, and I know these parts of the story so that I can fill in the blanks for maybe even the little kid, maybe even Mama's grandkids. Like, because I kind of, so it's really neat. It's like she's still teaching me.
She definitely wrote those notes for y'all.
For sure.
And she's making the connection so to make sure you make the connection.
Yeah. She gives us the hints that we need.
Yeah. Like, remember, she's saying, don't you remember, this is Leroy Macmillan's mother that lived across the street. And Grace is related to
Yes, and remember that, and then if you want to go on into the history of all that, Lucy Hale, that is on TV, is Julia's great grandchild or something, whatever. I mean, I can't keep it all straight, but basically, you can, 7 degrees of separation. I mean, you put them all together. But Mama did a good job of connecting.
Yeah,
starting the connection.
She's making all of those.
Yeah.
Connecting the dots for you.
And I know, and what's really neat is on some of these, like here's one that I think is really cool. And this was something that Wilma Reeves had a quote in here, and Mama wrote, I loved Wilma. And then that just brings up all the Wilma stories, because she did, and I grew up in special services over there. And so Wilma was in our lives forever. And so Mama wrote about Wilma a few times in here, so I snapped a picture and I sent it all to Robin Reeves. Because I've done this with a few of these. I'm like, people have got to see this. This is so cool. And Mama did. It loved Wilma. But she's got another story or two in here about Wilma that are the funny ones. I'm glad I hadn't run into the inappropriate ones yet. Okay, this one says, Kathy Carter makes good mayo. And this is Ormsby's mayonnaise, which is the Rutledge family. And then Emily Vulture, when I saw this, I'm like, I went to college with Emily Vulture. I mean, it's just such a small world. But she's talking about her grandmother there. But then Mama said that Kathy Carter makes good mayo. So it's like to that connection, like, doesn't really even have anything to do with the Rutledges, but it's like, make sure you know that she knows how to do this. Really cute. Cute, Patsy. He submitted Big Mama's blueberry pie. Okay, Mama doesn't really care about the recipe. She wants you to know about Jerry. So Jerry says right here, Jerry Clower came to perform at July 4th celebration the year I was pregnant with Price, 1978. It was so hot. Steve and I were chairpersons of the festival called Freedom Celebration. Thousands of people, at least 5. Mama was good about numbers, so it probably was 5,000 people. That's more than the trick-or-treaters they had. They had 3,500 the other night. I still can't believe that. Jerry Clower was an ass. We had to drive him and feed him, etc. I wanted to kill him. He complained about being hot. I was hot. And she wrote it like that. Isn't that funny?
She was pregnant.
Pregnant in the middle of July. Yeah, Price was born in August. She always talked for her whole life till she was like, probably her deathbed shocked that summer how hot she was. So Jerry Clower, all I remember him because Daddy could drive this big red Buick, and we had to go pick him up at the airport. And back then it was just me and Mom and Daddy all the time, like until Price came along. It was just the 3 of us everywhere. So if they were running for Freedom Celebration, I was too. So I would be with them. So we go pick up Jerry Clower, and I just remember that laugh. He thought he was cool, And then Mom and Daddy didn't put up with that kind of stuff. They were just like, oh my God. They both when I just remember that they were like, oh, he's such a jerk, and all that. I've sat here and just looked through this book and just been able to. I think it's been a good way of processing Mama's death. Honestly, it's been one of the ways. There's lots of ways, but this one has been like, she is sitting right here beside me, telling me secrets. I mean, it's really cool. It's really cool. Mom and Dad, I think, had extensive book collections. And, of course, my grandmother was an English teacher and her master's in English. And
That's Marjorie?
Marjorie.
Okay.
And then her dissertation is actually over there on that bookshelf. And you had asked me the other night if I read everything on the bookshelf. And the next day I started thinking, I have not read Gengi's dissertation. I have not read a lot of stuff on that bookshelf. Like, I started thinking about all the stuff on there. But I've read
What was her dissertation on?
It's something about
I don't know. I mean, I really don't. I can't remember. I feel like it might be about something with Faulkner, but I can't remember that. But she had to do it, or a master's thesis, I guess. But I don't know. It's bound. It's a book. And then I found, when I was cleaning out Mom and Daddy's stuff, I think it's my granddaddy, Doc, who was a vet here for many, many years. He was a large animal vet, Price Livingston. And he was everybody's animal vet out in the county and everywhere. He was the only one. It was in his office is where Screamco is now. And he died before I was born, but he went to vet school at Texas A&M, which was a big deal back then, you know. And but he also went to this is something my Uncle Joe would know a lot more, but he went to the Army, I think. But I've got some of his books over here that were like his Army books or something. At first I thought they were veterinary school books, but they're like history books. So I think books are like another way, even especially cookbooks too. That's why we kind of keep them all. But when I went through Mom and Daddy's stuff, I had to get rid of a lot because it was too much. So we donated a lot to the museum. We sold some. The boys took some. I took some. But for me, I was an English major, and so I love, and I have a book club. You know, I love reading, but I'm a slow reader. I like writing way more. But I like to read. I like to have a lot of time. And my daddy used to tell me, because he was a big reader, and Mama too. I mean, they're, you know, I guess education is very important in our family. I think like hyper educated maybe, but but they were big readers. But Daddy was the fastest reader I'd ever seen. So I did keep a few of his like Alfred Hitchcock books, and some of those I've never read any of those. And then I wanted Price to keep some of the history books. Price loves the history, and then Mom. I keep looking at that bookshelf and finding some that I remember. Oh, that lay by her bed, or that one was always. I wonder if she read. Because I don't know. You know, like I know some of those over there were different things that she'd read. So I tried to keep the ones that meant something, including, you know, that cookbook and a lot of cookbooks. I've got a lot of cookbooks of hers and Gengi's and Glenda's, I think.
The children's books over there, some of the older ones, who did they belong to?
Okay, those are really cool. The oldest one I found over there was like a 1920. Did you look at them at all? So it was like a 1929 or something. There's like a really old. Some were my grandfather's, some were my daddy's, and I think some were maybe even my grandmother's dad. He was a doctor too. So Gengi grew up in a like him going on house calls and so I think he was W.M. Hayes. I think he's Hays Hayes, so that's where Hayes' name, my brother's name, comes from. But I think, and Gengi was Marjorie Hayes Livingston. But anyway, I think some of his are up there. There's some really old ones up there, really cool. I found those recently when I was cleaning things out. A lot of it's a miracle that some of them ended up here, because when you're cleaning out that stuff, you get rid of a lot.
There's a lot.
And then Mama collected children. So Mama was an educator, as you know. So she collected children's books even before Hayes had kids. You know, we had some, but she just kept them as an educator. I think she would go to, she just kind of kept them. And for any kid that came to our house, she always gave books at Christmas. She's a lot like Dolly. Mm-hmm. She gave a lot of kid books. And then I always kind of collected children's books. I just always kind of wanted to write a children's book. I just think because of some of them are not great, and they could really use some good ones out there with good language development and stuff. But she collected them, and then I collected them. Then when Beckett and River were born, and now baby Finn, I kept them all because she would always keep them all in her bedroom. They were always in her bedroom for any kid. Glenda's grandkids, Keith and Clint's kids. I think anybody that came over, Aunt Patsy's had, so she always had toys and books. So I try to do that too. Mm-hmm. Definitely not Patsy, but I try to keep the stuff that she would have kept. It's hard because she kept a lot. Oh, goodness. Okay, so Gengi, which I call her Gengi because that's the name I gave her. I was the first grandchild. Was born in Richmond. Mom and Daddy had me there. Gengi was living in Richmond. My grandmother lost her husband, my doc, that was the veterinarian. He was from what I understand, he worked hard and he partied hard. So he was a partier. I know they had big parties at the Livingston house, drank, smoked cigarettes, worked all the time. I think he was a walking heart attack. He dropped dead of a heart attack in our Cleveland Street house over there. Joe was 12. Nancy was about to be a senior in high school. Daddy had just gotten married. I mean, Scylla was living on, I think Scylla was off living. So it was just devastating. So Gangi they sold the house. They moved to Richmond where her brother was living.
Richmond,
Virginia.
Virginia, okay.
And so that's where I was born. Mom and Daddy moved there, and then they came back. But anyway, Gangi that was pretty tragic, I think, and it really shaped her life in lots of ways, obviously. I mean, she married briefly when she was in Virginia to someone that Joe and Daddy never quit making fun of until the day she died. Like, they always made fun of her, which was probably not good, but it was kind of funny. He was like a loser. I mean, he was. So, and then she was done. That didn't work out. 6 months, over. No more, done with men after that. So then I was born shortly after that, and I really think I kind of changed her life in lots of ways. And she loved me. She loved Claire. She loved the other grandkids too, but unfortunately, Gangi had favorites. I mean, she just did. I mean, Joe was always her favorite. Daddy knew that. So that caused some family drama, but it also caused some humor. I mean, if I could ever sit down and write some of our stories, I mean, I think they don't need to be told after I'm dead, though, because, I mean, there's just we had a lot of drama. I mean, it's not like we're the Livingstons and the provinces. I mean, it didn't calm, And so Gangi caused a lot of drama. I cannot tell you how many times she walked home from the Cleveland Street house to her Garfield Street house crying and pouting. And this is like recently. I mean, like probably not last year. She died like in 2017, I think. But I mean, before, when she was still, just pout. We'd look out the window and it'd be in the kitchen. We'd be in the kitchen looking out the window like, well, does anybody know why Gangi's leaving? I mean, always, and what I as I got older and understood some psychology and blah, 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 I just don't think she ever got past a certain age emotionally as a child. She acted like a child. Even as a 90-year-old, this.
Yeah.
So she never developed emotionally. And I just thought the whole time she's in heaven, she's been in some classes, kind of learn. I feel like heaven's full of classes, and she just had some things to learn, and we all do, right? But the one about that, she didn't know how loved she was, and I think that made her act like a psycho. I mean, she was so mean to so many people. And then my favorite was toward the end of her life. She was a character. I mean, Logan used her quote in the New York Times when New York Times interviewed Logan for when we started to become a wet county, and he used Gangi's quote. And so, and I'll never forget this. I think Atkins was living in Japan, and Atkins wrote on Facebook something like, hell must have frozen over. I don't know. I'm kind of making it up. Something like that. Hell must have frozen over. Gangi and Logan Rutledge are in the New York Times, or something happened. Something like I can't. Atkins would know what his quote was, but it was something really funny. And I was like, Gangi's in the New York Times.
What was the quote?
Logan's got it framed. I know what it was. The alcohol quote. And so I love that my grandmother is quoted saying this in the New York Times. So it's, hold on. Some famous actor. No, wasn't him. Somebody. She quoted an actor saying, there are two things that are really bad ideas: communism and prohibition, or something like that. So it was something really matter of fact and like, well, that's actually pretty true. So that was kind of her statement of prohibition's never going to work. So make it legal, kind of thing.
Yeah.
She was definitely pro beer. I was buying her beer in high school with my fake ID. She would send me to Sherman to get her beer and cigarettes with my fake. I'm like, Gangi, I'm 15 or I'm 16. She's like, it'll be all right. And I'd go, I got it. Isn't that funny?
That's great.
So she was a beer drinking, coffee drinking, cussing, mean as a snake grandmother, but she also loved me, and she loved her kids. And I don't know that she actually had favorites. I think she just had, Joe was a baby when his daddy died. There's a lot of things there.
Yeah. That just created her.
There's one in there, Leanne, about Dean Provence's. He used to make the best duck gumbo, and he was a big hunter. I've told you a little bit about the hunting and stuff. Well, Mama wrote in there about Dean killed at Tip Top. So what is now Tip Top, the neighborhood? I don't know if they still call it Tip Top, but you know what I'm talking about, where the Hensons live now, whatever. Well, when Dean and Grace first bought that, it was all Dean's property. And so we used to have high school parties out there that were kick-ass. I mean, like bands, and it was all their property. And then my papa had this big boat that he was working on, and Dean had cows and turkeys, whatever. One day, but in there, in the book, it talks about that Mama says Dean shot 3, I don't know exactly what it says, something like 3 wild turkeys or something. He saw them out his that back deck or back porch, which was eventually Steve Bramlett's back porch, but saw and shot them and then put them in the gumbo. And then so I asked Shannon and Grace, when I saw that, I sent it to Shannon and Grace and Anna and Ginger, and I was like, and Grace said, oh my gosh, I had to beg Dean to sit down to write that recipe out because he always did it by heart. And she said he did not want, but I'm so glad she did. So Grace made him sit down and write down. And then Shannon, and then Shannon said, I remember the turkeys. He goes, because right after that we came over to your house for Thanksgiving dinner. I was like, I didn't remember that. It was so cute. When I'm in the kitchen, cooking or cleaning or organizing or whatever, it's the little things that you remember about your mom or your grandmother or your daddy, and you'll hear these little, and I hope everybody gets this experience because it's spiritual. I mean, it's really cool. It's like these little, remember, don't lick off the fork if you've already put it in the whatever, like little things like that. I've got a bunch of them that are just like Patsy tips. She's mainly more mama than it is daddy. I've got some Glenda ones too. Glenda's are a little stronger, like you don't hang a picture like that, or whatever. But mama's are, it's just so, but the kitchen is one of the places where it's not the only place, but it's definitely a big one where I feel her and know she's still helping me and guiding me. And there were so many lessons learned in the kitchen. And it's not just, Shara Owen taught me a ton of lessons in the kitchen and home ec. I mean, and it's not like I'm the best homemaker in the world either, but it's little things like this is the way you sweep, or you put on, think about what your mom, little things your mama teaches you, or your grandmother or whoever. And daddy learned a lot from Virginia Simmons worked for them when they were growing up, and that is Serenity Simmons Funeral Home. And so they are our family. So that's why we use their funeral home for daddy and mama, because Virginia pretty much raised daddy. And but he learned a lot of things from Genghis and Virginia. So it's just there's just so, I just think the kitchen's a big deal. It's where everything happens.
Yeah.
And so I love that I can still get mama in the kitchen. Like that's kind of cool. And I still to this day love handwritten notes and love, and mama, I think I said this earlier, but after she had her stroke and we look back over the year or two before that, there were little signs through her handwriting because she was starting to write small, because she has beautiful handwriting and none of us do. The daddy Price, we all needed occupational therapy. We had worse handwriting, but mother had beautiful handwriting. But it started getting really small letters, and it was going down, whatever. So when I opened this up and saw her handwriting in its glory, like when it was her, it was just, and she did her little things that she does. She's got little things like, she'd always call us SPL, PL, HL, and AL. And so she's got things like that in there, like, initials. MHL is what she called. She always did that when she wrote us notes, and just little things that she left us. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't even know what you are going to remember or forget about your parents when they die. You just don't know what you need,
Yeah.
But she knew. She knew what we needed.
I mean, it's really awesome. It's such a gift.
It really is.